Okay, salam alaikum. Welcome to this series. I don't know what it's called yet because this is my first interview with a proper feminine, powerful woman, Ramsha Suhail. We are here today to talk all about surrendering, letting go, being in your feminine power. And I feel like Ramsha exudes this so much. Like when I see her Instagram, I'm like, damn, like I have like a little crush on her. She's just so amazing, mashallah. The way she just exudes her feminine power, I'm just so in love with it. I was like, I've got to get on a call with Ramsha. We've got to do this interview. And in fact, it's been like a few months in the making of us coming together to have this chat. So I want Ramsha to introduce herself first, and then we're going to get into the topic of surrendering. So Ramsha, over to you.
Assalamu alaikum, rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Rosie. I'm so grateful to be here after all those months. And as you're saying, like, what's the name? I feel like the Surrender series sounds so appropriate. You
Oh
know,
yeah,
surrendering. It's like
I'm going to go over that.
it's meant to be. It's meant to
Yes.
be. So I'm a relationship coach. I'm also a spiritual mentor, and the work that I do with my clients is reconnecting them back to their fitras. So back to where, like, even aside from all of the labels, we talk about feminine energy, we talk about, letting go and letting God. I feel like at the core of it is just returning back to who you are at your core before the world got its hands on you, his dirty hands on you, okay? And like tainted your glass. Who are you underneath all of that? Beneath the traumas, beneath the noise, the limiting beliefs, the people who told you couldn't do it, society, your parents, loved ones, family, friends, everyone. Let's like push the clouds aside because I see you in your highest power, soul to soul. Let's get you to embody that. That's divine feminine energy for me in a nutshell. And that requires a whole lot of surrender for you
Oh, girl,
to get.
get goosebumps as you're saying that. Mashallah. So let's talk about surrendering. I know a lot of us women, we get triggered by that word, submitting, surrendering. What does it
Yeah.
mean to you?
So I want to clear up a misconception here first, because I feel like when women think of surrender, the majority of women, and I used to be one of them, is that we think of it being a weakness. Like we're giving our power away. We're surrendering in our marriage. We're like giving our power away to a man to decide, you know, whatever it is. Like, and I feel like the reason we think that surrendering is a weakness is because we have role models. We have people around us, or the women that were in our past generation, our mothers, right? Our aunties, our, just ancestors, I guess I could say in general, that have embodied surrender being not exactly a strength, and actually it being like, okay, you know what? I'm just gonna let people walk over me in a way, kind of like be a
Mhm.
pushover. And they don't know that they're doing that. We get to have the privilege that we get to be aware because they gave us that. But I feel like because we've seen all the women around us surrender, kind of go into people pleasing, going to listening to everyone else, giving their power away. That's why in our minds it's been conditioned. It's like, okay, surrendering is actually a weakness. We cannot surrender. It's really unsafe for us to let go of control. If we let go of control, then everybody's gonna like, walk all over us. And so we have to hold on really tight to the plan and to doing things our way. And that's what gets in the way of God's way. So I want to clear that up first and then get
Oh, I
into,
love that.
okay, yeah. So, like, what is surrender actually? And if we want to get to the root of surrender, I feel like let's just cut straight to the source, because we can listen to 100 million different definitions of it. I'm a researcher and a scientist and an award-winning therapist, as you know. And I know for a fact that like research science is an evolving human subject, right? It's something that 50 years ago, something that science called absolutely nuts, is now being normalized, is now being called okay. So before I look at the research, I love the research. I've used the research to actually come to God. But before I look at the research, I have to look at what is the actual objective truth here about surrender. And so if I want to go to that, I have to go to the root of the root. And for me, the root of the root as a Muslim woman is the Quran, and seeing like the unchanging word of God. And so what does that say about surrender? And so then we get to, okay, the entire religion of Islam, who is someone that surrender like who is a Muslim? It's someone that surrenders themselves to Allah so they can find peace. What is surrender? It's actually purifying your nafs, purifying yourself of your ego, so you can start to be, and this is the ayah that literally gave me my identity back from being a rough freaking child, a runaway teen,
Mm,
and like,
mm.
just thought my life was going to be over and there was no hope for me. Going from that to now being who I am, alhamdulillah, tabarakallah, is
Wow.
ayah Nur. The ayah that gave me my identity in Surah Nur and told me that I was not my trauma. I was not my childhood. I was not what even my beloved parents led me to believing that I was. I was none of those things that society tried to impose on me. I was something way beyond all of that. At my core, I am light. My heart is full of my creator's light. And the glass around it is this glittering, beautiful star. And so when I come back to my fitra through that ayah, like I surrender all of the resistance in the past and again, the work that I do with my clients, I open myself up to receive my creator's light, and that's where surrender then becomes something like magical, miraculous, light upon light. You light up the whole world. You become a global change maker. You're like living out your fullest purpose as a soul. So that's surrender for me. It's like purifying your heart of the ego and not listening to what people are saying about you and really staying in your own lane and being like, okay, what does my creator say is the absolute truth? What do I know is the absolute truth? Let's get to the source of it. And this is what it
Oh,
is. It's purification process. It's
how
divine.
amazing. Like a lot of us don't understand that is identity work is purifying yourself. Like
Yeah.
we think about the shifts that you have to do, but it's like
Yeah.
on the soul level, we really have to get deep into our wounds, our traumas, and really understand, just like you said, we are not our past. We are not
Yeah.
the child that grew up in an abused home or a neglected home. We are grown women. We can at any time activate that power. So you said
Yeah.
something about being a runaway teen. Talk to us about that, Ramsha. Like what was it like growing up? Like wherever you feel comfortable with. What was it like
Yeah.
growing up and what led you to God?
Oh, okay. This is like, I feel like I felt this honestly this sinking in the bottom of my belly. I was like, we're going there. So
Oh,
I love it though, because whatever is gonna come, I'll let it come, inshallah. I was a runaway teen, and before I was a runaway teen, I was a runaway 10-year-old. I was in fifth grade, and I remember I grew up the majority of my life in New York City, in Queens, okay,
oh
Flushing,
wow.
Queens. For those of
Oh,
you who know, right next to Chinatown, all right? Bubble tea, quickly, those were, Lucia Pizza, those were my jam. And I remember we were living in a one-bedroom apartment for the majority of my childhood. It was me, my two siblings, and my mom and dad. And I went to Muslim school. And I remember being so confused about my identity and being so confused about like just just my identity. I guess like who am I and what am I? Like I didn't ask those big questions, but I just felt like something was off inside of me. I wanted to escape. Like I have been called a runner in the past. Like
mm.
problems where I'm just gonna just run away. Like I'm getting out of the situation. I'm doing my husband calls it doing
You-
zoomies. Go zoomies out of here. So I zoomed out of my home because my parents were in an abusive marriage.
oh,
And it's still hard for me to share that
oh,
because it defined for a huge part of my life and still does like who how I see myself and my role as a daughter to my mother, to my relationship with my dad, with my siblings too, because my siblings are in completely different timelines, completely different situations. And so, when I was 10, I just wanted to do zoomies and get the heck out of that home where I felt like there wasn't peace. I have been seeking peace my whole life,
oh.
Rosie. Like
Girl.
peace, like just waking up and not being assaulted by arguments, to be
Yeah.
honest with you. Like waking up to a home where I didn't have to like just kind of run to the garage or like find what is my safe space where I won't hear the arguments or I won't just wake up to this. It was like a waking up. And for
Mm.
those who are listening who have grown up in abusive homes, you know that like the biggest thing you want in your life is to wake up in a home and feel safe. Like feel safe waking up.
Yeah.
And it's gonna get me so emotional because
Like, I'm getting emotional with you, girl. Oh,
yeah. So it's not about the things because my parents like strive to give us, private school education, get us clothes from Macy's, okay, the department store. They gave us like, I don't know, $20 a week allowance or something. I don't even remember. Um, so they tried to give us the things, but what they couldn't give us and what we wanted most of all, what I wanted most of all was peace. And because I didn't get that in my home, I wanted to run away. I wanted to actually like do bad things to myself. Like, I hurt myself. I cut
yeah.
myself. And I wanted to end my life at one point. Just being so raw about that because I feel like it needs to be said that you can
Mhm.
be in that kind of a desperate situation where you're searching up, like, I don't want to live anymore. How do I get the heck? How do I zoom out of this life? Like, how
Yeah.
do I zoom out of this?
Right.
And going from that to the Ramsha that you see right now, how did that happen? From being someone who could have been like on the subway, dead, like who could, or completely like, homeless or forgotten or whatever. Like, what happened to me that, like, or who happened to me being this Ramsha instead of that someone forgotten, someone lost in history, you know? Like, and what is the fire in my soul every single day when I wake up? And so that's why I ran away because I wanted peace. And so I was like, I'm gonna live on the subway. I had my roller backpack. Like back in the day. I don't know if you had a
Oh,
roller
yeah.
backpack. I had one. I really
I
like
do.
those. It's just like a suitcase. And so I had those. And I books were my best friend. Like books, okay, were my escape because at night when I was just tired of listening
Oh,
to everything, like I was tired of the BS, and I would just be like, I'm putting my blanket over me and I'm gonna hide and I'm gonna go into the world of Harry Potter. I'm gonna go into the world of like Narnia or whatever book I was obsessed with. I would read like all sorts of books. I would read like true crime and romance and like all the books at very early age. Just get them all. And I was so curious about like what made someone hurt the person that they love. Like I know I've never shared this before, but I was so curious. I was like, and I would read Anne Rule, like what the psychology of a person that makes them hurt, that makes them abuse, that makes them like not honor the person that they love, that they're building a life with. And that could have gotten me down a really bad path again. But then as time went on, my parents like their marriage didn't improve, but they brought us back to Pakistan. They brought us back, for me to finish high school here. And it was like my absolute rock bottom, where I then ran away from home again. And I was so torn between what I was being told was the right thing and what I was being shown was actually happening. And I was so torn because, again, I'm a child. Yes, I'm a teenager. I'm like 16 years old, 17 years old, but I'm a child. And like all I have in front of me are the examples, like are my parents, or is my family, and it is society. And so I'm hearing one thing is the right thing, and the other, like I'm seeing them walk something else, and I'm just like, "Ugh," so angry, so confused, so lost. And so I had an identity crisis at that time. And I remember really desperately wanting to fit in. And so I wore hijab before then. At that time, I took the hijab off because I wanted to fit in. I was a girl from New York and I was in a Muslim country, but I wanted to be cool. And so I did that. And I'm not proud of it, but it was a part of my journey. I want to honor that because it brought me to who I am today. And then a couple years after that was what brought me back to God ultimately. Like, and has been the case for like the last 10, 11 years. Alhamdulillah, tabarakallah. And that was
Yeah.
when I was halfway through undergrad. I was pre-med and I was caught up with the wrong friends. And I remember it was about, I think it was maybe like the night before Ramadan. And my parents were sick and tired of me coming home late. They're like, "What are you doing?"
Mm.
Like, just, and I just wanted to stay out because listen, I was finding what I wanted outside the home where I thought I was, like
Right.
that peace that I was searching. It was like avoidance. It wasn't peace. I didn't find the
It
peace.
wasn't.
It was like avoidance central. So it was like the better, the more I stay away from home, the more I can like avoid coming back home to this like anxiety. And so, I remember that night we were on the subway steps and my friends and I were just laughing. And we were like, it's going to be 30 days that we just go into Ramadan. And 30 days after that, we're going to fast for the 30 days, might even pray. And then after that, we're going to go back to, these crazy nights and just being crazy teenagers together. I was still, I think, like 19 at the time and having the time of our lives in New York City. So we're just going to do that. I was unhappy though. I just want to make that clear. Like I was avoiding, I was staying away, thought I was having the time of my life, but I was very unhappy. Like I would be in a crowd full of my friends and I would feel like so alone, even though I was surrounded. Again, like the material things that I had growing up, my parents tried to provide for us. Still didn't feel that void. The friends, college in New York City, didn't have to pay for college at all. I was getting paid to go to college and going to all the nice restaurants and everything still did not fill that void. And so then I left with them and I was like, that's so strange. Like I started questioning, I'm a curious
Yeah.
girl. And I started questioning. I was like, what the heck, Ramsha? Like, this doesn't make sense. But I was like, okay, you know what? Forget it. Like, I'm not going to be like super religious or anything like that. Like, I was, my family instilled a fear in me of being super religious. You'll go crazy. Society instilled this fear in me of being super religious. Like, no, no, no. How can you be super religious when you have like this past or this whatever? And so that was the Ramadan that changed my life because I had a heart to heart with the God that never ever left me alone when I was being a runaway teen or a runaway 10-year-old with my books, or when I was like, doing all the bad things as a child or as a teenager, as an adult. Like, that was the Allah that never, ever left me alone. And He provided for me through that. And I would be saying Ayatul Kursi when I was coming home late. And I was so terrified that like somebody was going to do something bad to me. I'd be looking around like New York City, it's not the safest space, to be. And as a woman, it's hard. So I would be saying Ayatul Kursi because I remembered that. I wasn't praying at the time, but I was saying Ayatul Kursi and I was like, Allah, la ilaha illa huwa al-hayyul qayyum. Like just saying that and expecting like, okay, you know what? Like God's got me. Like I had that in my heart, but I wasn't like fully submitted to him. I wasn't like, living that life in submission. And when I cracked my heart open, like I really just cried to him. I was like, done. I was done with all of the avoidance. I was done with all the garbage. I was done with all the fighting. I was done with the like anxiety, the confusion, the stress, everything. And I just broke down on my prayer mat. I think something just shook me. Like maybe my mom probably said something, and I was like, okay, I'm going in. And it was Ramadan. I remember, like, I think it was Ramadan 2014 or something. Yeah, 2014. And since then to this day, there's so much more that went on. But that was the beginning of my journey back to God and back home to myself, to a place where I wasn't searching for that peace in my friends, in the things, in the material, anything. I found home inside of me.
So beautiful. You came
I
home. I'm so glad you're here, Ramsha.
thank you,
Oh,
Rose.
there's so much to unpack from that story, and I can just imagine everyone listening to this is just like they see themselves in you, which is why I love doing stuff like this and talking openly about our journeys because you
Yeah,
can really learn the lessons. Usually social media is so curated. It's just like, you think everyone's got it made, but it's always a story. I know with you, Ramsha, when I first saw you, I was like, this girl's got a story. I know for a
yeah,
fact she's got a story. That the way you are able to express yourself, that comes with a lot of pain. It comes with a
absolutely.
lot of self judgment. It comes with a
Absolutely.
lot of self shame. That the way you're able to express yourself and be in your own power, I know for a fact women would love to be that way. They would love to be able to express themselves confidently without worrying about judgment. But just know the journey. The journey was you had to go through that pain, that challenge, and keep that faith in Allah that God's got my back.
Yeah.
I'm okay. And isn't it interesting how we judge ourselves, but the same God that we think is going to judge us never does. Like we were thinking that moment that when we're coming back home to God, we're like, oh my God, but I've done so many bad things. Like, I'm such a bad person. But you just find peace. You just like, it's like you just, like a sigh of relief. I'm home. I can unpack now. And God is the only one that's never going to judge you, especially when you come home to Him, especially when you surrender to Him. So thank you for sharing that story, Ramsha. Like, my heart is so full hearing it.
Mm.
Thank you so much for being vulnerable because I know it takes a lot to be vulnerable, but girl, I'm welcoming all of it.
Thank you
So
so
now that
much.
we know your journey to God,
Yeah.
I can understand that it helped you start your business. It helped you start the work that you do now. So
Yeah.
talk to me more about what you do with your clients
Yeah.
and how you get them to come home to God.
Oh my gosh. This is my favorite topic in the whole universe. So now that you know my story, you know a part of what it took, like the core of what it took to be who I am right now, being who I am today. And just like I want to tell you about that time in between. So right after I had that opening, like my heart opens and I wanted to come closer to Allah. Like I felt something that I hadn't felt in my life before, ever. Like it was something nobody could take away from me. Like I don't know how to explain it, but I feel like you would get it, Rosie. It's like you
Yeah.
found a best friend that's never going to leave you.
Yeah.
You know, and so you can
Yep.
tell your best friend everything. You can
Hmm.
confess everything. You don't need a priest in the way. It's just you and
No.
God. And
Right.
like you just talk to him like he's your bestie. And people get
Hmm.
really triggered when I say that. It's like, really? Like God?
Yeah.
Yes. Who else? Like he's actually one of his names is Al-Wali. He's a protecting friend. And so,
Right.
like, you don't got to be perfect. You don't have to be like a prophet or a saint to
Right.
be like a friend of God. You can have a conversation with you could be imperfect. Come with all of your imperfections. Surrender them to God and let him fill you up with his like
Yeah.
his premium gas. It's like
Yeah, exactly.
the gas from heaven, the like
The gas you're meant to have, not the cheap
the
gas.
glow up. So and
Of course.
it's
This is what it feels like to be feminine. Like just like laughing at what you talk to Allah about. Like I talk to God about so many things. I'm like, I must sound crazy to people, but I'm just sat there talking to God, like having a great time, a good jolly old time. And it feels so good. It's like I'm home.
It's literally, it's the most liberating feeling in the world. Before I
Right.
get into my story of my business, right? Launching my business, my book, everything. There is something funny I want to share. Is like I had a teacher who was not Muslim, and she would come over often, like after, she stopped teaching me. She's like family friends with us, and she would be really curious about Islam. And she would ask, she'd be like, Ramsha, don't you want to like feel the freedom of like going to the beach and feeling like the water on your legs and being in like, a bikini and just feeling so free, like the at least having your legs like feel the water. And I was like, I was laughing because what we just spoke, like true freedom is not in bearing your body. True freedom, this is where every like gets it wrong, in my
Literally.
opinion. Like it is not, it's you're in a commie. I'm a hijabi. We know this. That
Right.
like I
Exactly.
feel like the most liberated I have been in my life is when I started wearing
Mm,
my hijab for not
right.
anyone else, not even my parents, but I started wearing it for Allah. And it's like a symbol of my devotion to him, my surrender to him. Like I try again, I'm not a perfect Muslim, but his perfection fills up my imperfections. And so we're like a team. And
That's deep.
so
That line right
I
there, his perfection feels my imperfection. Y'all need to tweet that.
think
Y'all need to
yeah,
like
right?
create a quote.
It's gotta go
That's
viral.
gonna be banging. That's gonna go viral.
Agreed. So anyway, true freedom, liberation, that's what actually I help my clients with, like liberating themselves from all these false ideas of what freedom is supposed to be and like, what that looks like for them and actually going to the core of who they are, stripping away all the ego, soul to soul, like I mentioned before. And I could not do that had I not walked through the fire a million times and like burned myself to the ground, which getting really like graphic with it because it's true when you have like massive dreams of making massive impact in the world, you have to burn your previous identities to the ground and you really have to surrender at higher and higher levels. So it depends on where you are. When you come to me, your next level might be a level 1 of surrender. Someone else's next level might be a level 10 or level 20 of surrender. And so one of my like I feel like my superpower of superpowers is being able to see you as your highest, truest, most authentic self in your soul, like and that's what I call being the rich receiver, which is like who are you when you're highest, your most authentic self? I want to mention a poem that I have pinned up on my page. It's a poem by the poet of Pakistan. His name's Iqbal. Okay, and this is the core of my work. And I'll tell you all about the book. I wrote it in 6 days. It's like a superhuman effort. But that was also through
Oh,
surrender. And it was called
I love
surrender,
that.
like submission. Yeah. So anyway, now Iqbal says in Urdu, okay, I'm sure many of your listeners are Urdu speakers. खुदी को कर बुलंद इतना elevate yourself so high कि हर तकदीर से पहले that before every act of destiny खुदा बंदे से खुद पूछे God, the creator of the heavens and the earth, asks you, human being, बता तेरी रज़ा क्या है? Tell me, what do you want?
Mm,
Elevate yourself so high, let go of all the attachments, surrender your ego entirely, die before you die, as the Prophet ﷺ said, so that
mhm.
you become that person that Allah, before every act of destiny, look at the power he gave you. Look at the empowerment here in this like statement.
Amazing.
Like
Right.
every act of destiny, you get to hold the pen and actually write like just because I grew up in an abusive home does not mean I'm gonna end up in an abusive marriage and my daughters and their children and children's children, like this is gonna be a cycle that just continues for generations. It ends with me right now because I chose to surrender to God and see myself as I really am instead of all the BS that society made me believe and like my own self, my own ego made me believe. And so get to the core of the core, make yourself, that's my ultimate mission in life for myself and for the women that I work with. for my entire movement. Like I want to influence people worldwide beyond just women. Honestly, I've worked with children, I've worked with men, and it's really awakening that power inside of you through surrender. Seeing yourself as you really are on a soul level. That's my intuitive superpower, is my gift. And then stripping away all of the noise, all the BS, all of the, garbage really that has clouded you from seeing yourself. And none of it is your fault. But now you get to change it. And so it's the greatest empowerment in the world because your identity, and this is what changed my whole life. This is why I'm here doing this work, is because I realized my identity is not my past, is not my traumas, fears, insecurities, doubts, anything, shame, guilt, judgment, anything. At my core, my highest potential is being light upon light. Oh my gosh, I can do anything. Like infinite field of possibilities. Like I am, and that's how I've been able to do anything I want. I wrote a book
Love
in
it.
6 days when I was
Yes,
trying
talk about
to
that.
write. Yeah. So I was trying to write half books my whole life. I was like, I'm gonna write a book about my mom's story and her overcoming stuff. And then I'm gonna write a book about this, like this fictional novel, that, whatever. And I'm a writer, I'm a poet, I'm a storyteller. But I couldn't finish those books until I surrendered from that year, 2014, when I first had that encounter with God, that open-hearted, heart to heart, bestie talk with him. They're like, oh, I'm done with this. Please help me. You know, and then and then 6 years went on in between. The entire world goes on lockdown in 2020. COVID happens, and I'm just all of a sudden applying to, I think I was writing my medical school application essays at the time. And my parents thought I was all up in my room, writing the applications. And I get this idea in my heart at like Fudger time in June of 2020 that Ramsha, you got to write a book. You got to write it in 6 days. And
Mhm.
it's going to be about the theory of everything. Like, I kid you not. And I'm going to own the fact that I'm like everyone that's listening here, like I'm someone who I'm a genius. Like I'm saying that without any arrogance. I'm saying it from a place of pure soul that like my brain works really, really fast because I
Yep.
expose myself to a million different things. I'm able to
Mhm.
detect patterns like a freaking genius. I'm able to like one, two, three, I meet you. Okay, this is what's going on. This is how open you are to receiving. This is where the blocks are. Like I just it's my gift and it's a gift from Allah and I surrender to him in that. It's none of my own like accomplishments or anything like that. It's his mercy. And I'm grateful for it because it lets me do the work that I love, you know? And so when I had heard that voice, I was like, oh my God, in 6 days, I've tried to write books and I haven't succeeded yet. How the heck am I going to do it in 6 days? I opened myself up to the possibility instead of resisting it. After 6 years of in the middle of it, Rosie, was like research, contemplation, doubting, asking God questions like, if you have a son, give me a sign. If you like exist, show me this, give me that sign. Like just having
Mm.
in 6 years of just trying to figure out what is the truth, like just piecing it all together for myself. I'd be going to like my organic chemistry classes and my psychology learning class, like undergrad, and I would have this thick folder of research that was connecting Islam to astronomy, to biology, to research, to business, to like all the things I was trying to figure out. I studied comparative religion. I was hungry for the truth.
Yeah.
Give it to me, you know? And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you truly are a seeker of guidance, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants you to ask for it. Be thirsty, be hungry for it. He gives it to you. You have to be willing to not give up, though. It requires a great friggin' deal of persistence because this is the key to everything. This is like the keys of the universe right here in your hand.
Mm.
And so then, when all of those 6 years, I still held on to the rope of God. Even sometimes I shared this with my clients, like even if it was by a thread, I wasn't giving up. I kept going. And a lot of people want instant results, but like microwave results. I want it right now, right now, right now. Why am I having it right now? Like, why don't I have my soulmate right now? Why don't I have like $1 million right now? Why don't I have, all these things, like a baby right now? Whatever it is, it's like, shh, Like that's your ego. Shh. Let's soothe that child that like wants it now, now, now. And like let's see what is the bigger soul development that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is like push through this little caterpillar. Okay. And I promise you, like what's waiting on the other side with our good opinion of Allah is the butterfly who's gonna get to fly,
Mm.
who's gonna get to experience life in a whole new way, who's gonna get to birth this new life. But you can't do that with this current identity of being a caterpillar and being unwilling to move through that struggle of the cocoon. Like you got to move through it. It's nature, you know, can't bypass that. And so with that persistence, then the doors, it was like the doors of heaven opened in 2020. And I could finally see those things that like I hadn't been able to see before my whole life. I was struggling to like I had I guess I could say that I was believing, like I was saying I'm a believer, but in my heart, really, like I wasn't fully solid in my belief. I wasn't like rock solid. Yes, I was turning to God in everything. Yes, I was like, you know, every time I messed up, I would come back to God. Yes, I had this beautiful relationship with Him, but like the belief was not fully rock solid that like Allah is the one and that he can do everything for me. And like it just wasn't there. It hadn't landed. I hadn't fully embodied it, but I was still trying. I wasn't giving up. And so then after that, um, you know, when I surrendered to the voice that told me to write the book in 6 days, it was like I was seeing like it was like the veil around my heart lifted in a way. Like
Mm.
it actually lifted. I haven't shared this story before, but like it was the best experience of my life. It was like the greatest transformation. Cause you know the clouds I was talking about that like taint your heart and it's light? It was like the clouds just lifted and I could see things that I couldn't see
Mm.
before. And this is something the majority of people will not be able to understand, but I hope there are some that will, and they'll come and reach out to me and be like, oh my God, like I've experienced this, or this is something I want to experience, or whatever it is. And so it gets given to those who seek. And I was seeking for all that time. And I looked like I remember um, Einstein's theory of relativity at that time made sense. Everything made sense to me. I remember I was looking at the brain and I had a sketch of the brain. And it's something so cool. Like, I know my science nerds are gonna geek out of that. This, I don't know if you're a science nerd, Rosie, but I love connecting the dots between like science and Islam.
Yeah.
And so, because I had that belief now landed in my heart from Allah's mercy after these 6 years of just being in the cocoon, I saw that like the brain and the body and like everything was literally in submission to Allah. If you look at the brain, and again, it's like your heart, you cannot see this if your heart is blind. You can see it when your heart is open to the truth. And that requires the purification process. And so I saw that the brain, like if you look at the anatomy of the brain, which I had in front of me, I wanted to be a brain surgeon. And I had a picture, like some of my students drew it, and I saw how the brain was actually in a shape of submission. If you look at the
Wow.
vision of the brain, like it's like a person
Wow.
who's in submission. And then I started recognizing like the power of the human heart through that experience writing the book. It was like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was just installing things in me. And he was like, girl, write, 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 write. Like on the backs of envelopes, in my notes app, on my phone, on my laptop,
Wow.
everywhere. And I kid you not, 6 days from start to finish, that book started out in prose. It ended up in poetry unintentionally. It was just flowing. It was in
Wow.
me. And every single chapter is about light and this, light and the multiverse, light and like, you know, submission, light and the plague, like the COVID pandemic. What is it teaching us? 6 feet apart, 6 feet under, like, you know, just the connections between everything became so clear to me. And I wrote that all down. And then God was like, stamp this with a title that's like submission, the theory of everything. This is how you find peace. This is the cure for all anxiety. This is what it is. And so my pen name was Dr. Peace for that, you know, and it was like a play on Dr. Seuss as well, you know, like the poetry. And kids of all ages can read it. And, you know, adults can read it too. Kids have read it, adults have read it. They've said, you know, it changed their lives. gave them so much peace. It has breathing exercises throughout it before I knew about like breathing practices. And one thing that triggered this opening for me before I wrote the book was, I think maybe the same day, I got the inspiration in my heart because I was receptive to it to start breathing in Surah Fatiha. And so I would
Oh,
just be, I was like on my prayer mat and I was like, Bismillah Rahman Rahim, deep inhale, hold, release. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil
mm,
Alameen, deep inhale, hold, release. So I would do that for
yeah.
the entire Surah Fatiha. That single prayer, I feel like has been the best prayer of my life yet. That prayer where I was like, ooh, ooh, it was like the sun was shining and the sun was shining. It was on my prayer mat. It was like me, like a slice of heaven had landed, like come to me.
Mm.
And I was there receiving it by Allah's mercy. And so that book got written, and I wasn't waiting around for someone. I'm not a girl who waits. Like, I'm not waiting around for someone to select me or to choose me. I'm going to choose myself. I founded an entire publishing house based on my grandma, Amina Publishing House. And then I like went out Kindle, published it on Amazon. It's available worldwide. And
Mashallah.
I became the author of Submission, the Theory of Everything. And then that
Oh,
led to my business because, people were, I was tutoring kids before then. And my uncle was like, um, giving me feedback that like, you could really help these kids with their anxiety. You could really like coach them to believe in themselves. Why don't you start a group class? And so then it led to like me making these creative programs about connecting Islam and science, Islam and writing,
wow.
and alternative education that like the things school doesn't teach you, I'm going to teach you here on a silver platter so that you don't have to like wonder your whole life. Like I've been like going to school and getting my master's and my
I know.
PhD and I still don't know what life is like here. Let me tell you, okay, this is what life is all about. This is the theory of everything. And then that led to a couple years later, I was deep into personal development. I am, personal growth, self-development in all levels I'm like obsessed and hungry about. And so are the women I work with. And I just got into it where I was like, okay, let me find out what's my potential. Like scratch, keep scratching, keep going deeper, keep going deeper. And so then that led me to getting married to the love of my life. Alhamdulillah, tabarakallah.
Oh, mashallah.
And then it led me to, he actually encouraged me to go online. So this was offline. It was like on Zoom. It wasn't really on social media or anything like that, my business. And in the first few months of my business taking off, like the first few months, it blew up, Rosie, like on the ground without any social media or anything like that. It was just through word of mouth that like kids were bragging to each other that like I could go into Ramsha's classes. I would
Oh,
be making faith so fun, so magnetic that they were just obsessed. They would wake up at like 6, 7 a.m. to attend these classes where I was like
oh,
making it, this and I was living, breathing proof that you can be an imperfect human being, flawed human being, broken human being, and God can accept you and fill you up with his, perfection and his light. And so they saw that in me. They saw that light, that enthusiasm, that energy that I feel like is so desperately missing from the imams and like the teachers and like everyone. They're just teaching it dead, like dead. And I'm not
right,
anyone to
literally.
call, like dead hearts. You're teaching faith with dead hearts. Bring your heart back to life. Okay, be the
Literally.
glowing femme. And then come and teach people about faith, teach people about enlightenment. Like you cannot teach it without being embodied in it yourself. That doesn't
Right,
mean you have to be perfect, just means you have to have an open heart and like literally surrender your darkness, your
right.
ego. So then, brought my business online. Husband also encouraged me to go back to grad school, get my master's in mental health, so that I would have that also like as an edge to deal with like not just the belief and like the coaching side of things, but also like the deep, psychodynamic stuff, the trauma, the somatics, all of that kind of stuff. Like get the like just keep refining yourself, be as educated as you can about this, go deeper and deeper and learn from the best, seek all the knowledge that you can, all of that. So that was a part of that process. Graduated 4.0 GPA and that's
Wow.
what was a scholar in the state of New York. this brand new scholarship opened up. That was another prayer that was answered because I was like,
Wow.
tuition at that time. I was a newlywed bride, situation changed. I put my business on the ground on pause and I went to another country, got married and everything. Had to start over from scratch. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was like, listen, I haven't left you. So I'm here. And
Mashallah.
then, I mean, like, here we are. So it's just a learning process. I am growing through this business so much myself. It's like my baby, and also like my own soul development, my own greatest mission, my soul's fulfillment, my divine purpose, my everything. Like, and my husband is my greatest supporter in that, in my dreams. He like kicks me in the butt when I forget, and he's like, listen, you got dreams to fulfill, girl. Like, go do it.
Yeah.
No zoomies for me. Like, let's go. When it gets uncomfortable, like, building a business and building not just
Yep.
a small business. We're not here to build small businesses.
No,
Like,
it's a mission.
IMH is like a massive global movement and like a globally beloved brand. How are we meant to do that? And
Yeah.
like, it's really our legacies. Like, it started with the desire to leave a legacy, leave this world better than we found it. And so,
Mm.
it makes you
Yeah,
face the
I
deepest,
always
darkest
say that
shadows.
entrepreneurship is spiritual. It's way more spiritual than that physical. Like
Yeah,
it forces you to grow. It's like you have to sit in a waiting room of God for a long time before you get what you want. And you're going to become something. Either you're going to become impatient or you're going to become that woman that's like, yes, I'm ready to walk through that door. And if I don't see anything through that door, I'm still going to be fine. I still have Allah. I'm happy. So it's like
surrender.
it's spirit. It's so spiritual. A lot of people, a lot of women, I believe, don't miss that part of the entrepreneurship journey. In the sense they say to themselves that, oh, it's going to be this money or my time back, but it's way more than that. It's a process, and I feel
Yeah,
like us women having online businesses is probably the most feminine thing we can do. I know a lot of
agree.
people think it's very masculine. Yes, it requires discipline, but it
Yeah,
requires a lot of belief in the unseen. Like,
yeah,
how do you know that when you post a post asking people to come and DM you, how do you know they're going to come to you? That's
yeah,
belief. That's feminine. That's surrendering. That's like, I'm going to let go. I'm going to like post this stuff. I'm going to have this tawakkul that I trust myself and my services and I trust Allah and I trust the people as well. That requires a lot. It's a
mm,
spiritual process. It's deep.
Rose, I love that so much. Like, I feel like we need a part two on entrepreneurship and like
Literally.
how it's like the most feminine thing you can do is be an
Yes.
entrepreneur. And not
Literally.
everyone can. Like, not
Yes.
everyone is cut out for it because not everyone has the patience to actually move through the seasons of business and they just want like, business on a, silver platter. Like, just hand it to me. Allah subhanahu wa
Yeah.
ta'ala is not gonna, as much as he loves you and he wants to give you everything, like in this world and the next, he wants to make sure you're a match to hold it. Like, it's the people,
Exactly.
like when people win the lotto and they just like bust it all, like, $200
Yeah.
million or like whatever the amount is, and they just like spend it all and they're
Yeah.
left with nothing. It's like,
Yeah. And Allah doesn't want
are
you to
you
do
really
that
ready to hold
because He
that
don't want you to blame Him.
responsibility?
So like you have to understand in your mind that if you're not getting something straight away, because you're
Yeah,
Allah saving you and your belief in Him too. Because in the end, you're probably like, oh,
yeah,
I'm not ready for this, or this is too much. Oh my, why me? It's too much of a burden. Because people don't realize that blessings come in burdens too. Like Allah says, if the Quran was to fall on the mountain would just
yeah,
crumble because the Quran is a blessing.
yeah,
So blessings carry
yeah,
weight, which we forget. We think in our minds that just the burdens that carry that weight. Nope. Blessings carry a huge weight, a bigger weight
yeah,
than a burden. Like a burden you
yeah,
can give away, but blessing you hold on to. So if you're not the woman who is able to handle that blessing, that's going to become like a sabotage pattern. You're going to hurt yourself and hurt your relationship with Allah. So you have to be very careful when you're saying to yourself that oh, it's not come yet or it's not here yet. You're not surrendering to the process. Really, what you have to do is remember that when you're making dua for something, you made payment for it. It's
yeah,
done. It's
yeah,
coming. You just have to become the woman who aligns to that frequency of having and sustaining that thing. It's not just about having it, it's about being able to maintain it, look after it, like take care of it. That requires a lot. So you have to ask yourself, are you ready? Are you ready
yeah.
to be that feminine woman? Which brings on to the next question. What does femininity mean to you?
So, first of all, I love everything that you're saying. It's hitting my soul. Um, are you ready to receive it? Are you really ready to receive it? And I feel like for me, femininity is really about surrender. It really is because what I believe and what I know to be the truth is that surrender is the highest form of feminine energy. It's the highest way of expressing your femininity, is being in that state of like when you go into prayer, when you're walking through the supermarket, when you're like, in a conversation with your husband, when you're with your kids, like, how much are you letting your ego dictate your responses, your behavior, and how much of it is you actually surrendering? What does God want to move through me? What does
Yeah.
He want instead of what
Mm-hmm.
like, my limited ego wants? And so for me, that's like the ultimate feminine energy is like, and that's actually what opens you up to receiving. Because if you're holding on so tightly to like, this is what I want this little pebble right here. And if I don't get it, I'm going to be really upset and angry. Like, why didn't God give this to me? And like, God's like, listen, girl, that's a pebble. I want the whole freaking ocean for you. I want everything
Right.
for you. And you not
Right. Like,
see.
come on.
And Allah's like, it's not the heart, it's not the eyes that are blind, it's the hearts. And so
Heart.
because your heart can't
Exactly.
see yet, it hasn't done the purification process, that identity coming back home to yourself. And to him, it sees the pebble as like the ocean. It's like, this is everything I want, this is everything I ever wanted. And so you see a guy, an abusive guy, just being flat out upfront and super honest with you. You see him as like the love of your life, your soulmate. And so,
Right.
really, I've seen, yeah, we know so many, we can think of so many examples. But like people who, because they haven't learned how to look at life through the lens of truth and the lens of like Allah, the lens of a pure heart, and they see it through the lens of their ego, that's what causes them to suffer. That's what takes them away from that femininity. That's what takes them away from the blessings they've been asking him for. And I get this question asked a lot in the feminine energy space, and just like in calling in your soulmate, right? It's like, why, if Allah wrote soulmates for everyone, then why do people end up with like abusive men? Why do people end up with the wrong guys? Is that like Allah just wrote it for them? And so then it's like, it has to be like a smack back in your power that like this might have happened to you or someone that you love. I know someone that I love. I know people all around me that I can think of. But you might know someone, but like how willing are you to then let go of that being your reality and exchanging it for the actual, it's in the Quran. It's a verse in the Quran that like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created you from a single soul, created from that its mate. And he tells you the exact thing that marriage is supposed to be. It's supposed to be like a union of peace, which I'd been searching for like all of my
Mm.
life, and harmony, and like, mercy and love and affection. So that's what it's actually supposed to be. Your The reason that people end up with the wrong people is because they're not aligning themselves with the truth. What Allah,
Mm-hmm.
you cannot manifest your soulmate or call in your soulmate if you're in your ego, because you won't be able to see him when he's right in front of you. You'll be like,
Exactly.
that's like a boring dude. That's not the
Yeah.
right guy. You're going to bypass him in the supermarket. You're not going to see him. The opportunities are flowing right now to you. You're not going to see them because you're just not ready yet, because you're in ego. And so you got to get the ego out of the way. And that's where really powerful mentorship, that's where my work comes in. Like, get you the heck out of your ego. Let's rip away those veils. And you have to be
Yes.
willing. That's why I don't work with anyone. I call it the 0.0001%, is because you have to be absolutely willing to surrender everything that you are and just be like a humble, open receiver. Like, whatever Allah wants for me, I'm here for it. And you're willing to do whatever it takes. You got to be hungry. There's a certain level of hunger and thirst that it requires. People just think it's handed to you. Heck no, it's not. Are you kidding me? Like, you have to
Mhm.
go through that shaking up to the point where you're like, God, when is your help coming? You know? Really? It's like,
Yeah, you got to be forced. This is
come
what people don't
on.
realize. You got to be forced to surrender. Like in that
Yes.
point where you're like, Allah, where is the help coming? That's like you asking Allah, I'm surrendering now. You have
Yeah,
to feel the break. If you don't feel the break, you're never going to surrender. If you
that's
if you
when the
if you
heaven comes.
always saw
Yeah,
it, the future, and you always saw where you're going, you wouldn't need to surrender or have faith. So like when you're in that moment of chaos, it's like, no, something's coming. I'm
yeah,
aligning. I'm
yeah,
identifying. I've changed. I've shifted. I've healed. I'm different. Instead of going back to your old patterns of saying to yourself that, oh my gosh, it's getting worse. And it's
yeah.
like, just like you said, like you only work with the 0.01%. The 0.01% have that mindset that like, the chaos is here. I'm ready.
Mhm.
I'm prepared. I'm surrendering everything now. I'm done.
Exactly. Exactly. And that requires a certain level of character. But if you really want to have it all, if you really want to live this life like in full alignment of your purpose, if you really want to be a woman who, like, when death comes to her, she's like, I squeezed out every single drop of what God put in me, the light,
Mm.
everything I shone to the brightest maximum wattage. That's it. God, I'm ready. Nafs al-mutma'inna, like peace, come please, let's reunite, inshallah.
Oh,
And
inshallah.
so
That's such a
if
beautiful
you
picture I had in my mind then. I love that.
dream of that, I'm like thinking of Hadrat Asya radiallahu ta'ala anha, who's like, my Lord, she's being killed by her husband. And she's saying,
Mm.
as like her body is being torn up, like she's like, my Lord, build for me a house near you in paradise. She
Yes. Oh
sees
my God.
beyond what is happening to her right now. And she sees the limitless possibilities that exist with her Lord. Build me a house near you in paradise. It's like, oh my God, that's a queen of paradise. Can you compete with that? Like,
Right.
can you align to that
Literally. That's
frequency?
the frequency. You got to get there.
Also, will protect us, but like he knows
I
we can't
mean,
handle it, which is why it's like we've been asking for it. Like, how can you really handle it? That's the question. He wants to give it all to you.
yeah.
How ready are you to receive it and hold it and grow with it? Whether it's marriage, whether it's
Girl.
your business, whether it's like kids, whether it's, whatever desire you have in your life, friendships, sog, like food that's coming to you when you're hungry, okay, out of the blue. People you meet on airplanes that are like God's angels or something, that bring
Yeah.
you back to yourself, remind you of letting go. Actually had that happen. Like, so interesting. When you open yourself to the possibilities, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just like is like, okay, walk with me. You're walking with me, you chose to walk with me, okay, you're ready to surrender. It's like Hadrat Musa alayhi salam and Khidr
Yeah.
Islam when in the story of I think this is in Surah Kahf that like
Yeah.
he's just I don't know, is it in Surah Kahf?
Yeah.
Like the story
Yes,
of
it's still
how
counts.
he in Surah Kahf, right? So he's just saying that like, oh my God, I'm seeing this guy who's supposed to be my mentor doing all these crazy things. Like he's doing
Right.
absolutely insane things that make no
The
sense
most.
at all. He's like like destroying a person's, livelihood, a child, whatever it is, and like it doesn't make any sense. And so he's like, oh my God. And so literally someone's like, listen, if you don't have the patience, you cannot. That's what I feel is like the true level of like the highest level of mentorship. Like a person's gonna be able to see what you can't, and that's your mentor. Like you select a mentor based on them being able to see what you cannot see. And so then how willing are you to surrender to that as well? And surrender to receiving from them, from Allah, because you're allowing Allah to guide the two of you together. And so it becomes this like sacred relationship. It's like your soul chose this opportunity. Your soul chose to walk into this container so that it could develop to its highest self, its next level of whatever you want in life, of success. And so
Oh,
that's femininity, and also like get the BS out of the way. Like if you're really serious about this, like you will do whatever it takes. And you know
yeah.
where to find me. If you're ready to do whatever it takes, that's who I work with. So,
Girl,
yeah.
I could talk to you forever. Like we could talk forever.
I know I'm
Girl,
having
we
the
could be here
time of
forever.
my
We'll have a part
life.
two. Definitely. Girl, we have to. So where can
I'm
people
having
find
the
you?
time of my life
Let them
right now.
know.
Yeah. What happened, Rosie?
Where can people find you? How can they reach out to you?
Find me. Well, I have a website, glowingfemme.com. So my brand is Glowing Femme, and I just want to give people a little blurb about why Glowing Femme. The G and the F stand for putting God first. So a glowing femme
Mm.
gets her glow is able to embrace her femininity, is able to like just be seen by the right opportunities and see the right opportunities because of the glow of her heart. And that glow comes from putting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first and walking with him,
Yeah.
despite her imperfections, despite her past, despite limiting everything. Like you're walking with God. And so he gives you that glow. And so that glow then is like a sign to the right people and to you that these are the right people instead of you seeing with your ego or seeing with your heart. That's glowing femme in a nutshell. And so glowingfemme.com, you can find me on there. You can find me on Instagram. I'm pretty active on Instagram at the glowing femme. And I have a TikTok as well. I feel like it's at glowing femme too. So just find me at glowing femme. Connect with me on LinkedIn too, Ramsha Suhail. Okay. And yeah, like I'm so excited to know you. If something really struck your heart from everything that we shared, just reach out to me. Hit me up. I have a podcast as well that's going to be insane. It's starting out with just teaching you how to be authentic in sales, but it's going deeper into really like it's called Glowing Femme, but it's like Muslim girl tea, like heart to heart with Muslim women, just like me, just like you. And we're just sharing how it's like healing tea for your soul. You just come and you
Mm.
recharge, you fill up your cup and mind, body, soul, and just come open to receive, open to connect. And maybe I'll pick up a gem or two that'll change your life, inshallah.
Oh,
So, Glowing
I
Femme, the
love that.
podcast. And you could just DM me if you want the link to that. Yeah.
Ramsha, it was amazing having this conversation with you. May Allah continue to bless you. It's going to be the
Ameen.
last. We're going to see us again together. Thank you so much
Uh,
for your time,
inshallah.
inshallah. And yes, if you're listening to this and the wisdom that was dropped in this series, please drop in the comments, let us know. Like, we love hearing feedback from you and how this has affected you in a good way, of course, how it's inspired you, how it's motivated you. And yeah, I will see you in my next series. Take care. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.